How can we parent mindfully if we're not mindful ourselves?
Mindful Dads.
Hey everyone, welcome to Mindful Dads. I'm Alan, and today we're going to talk about parenting, particularly from a very mindful perspective. I'm going to share my own story with regards to this. Now, I found mindfulness out of pain and suffering. Way back in 2011, my mum was dying, and throughout that kind of period when she was very ill and just before her death, I was just running on automatic pilot throughout life. I wasn't really mindful. I was totally unaware of who I was and where I was going in life, and just this day-to-day life of not really being aware and or who I was. And there was one particular time that kind of really dragged me back to the moment when my mum found out that she had a long-term debilitating disease which was only going to be cured by kind of a lung transplant and the rest of the things. And I was going to work basically just on automatic pilot, absorbing lots of other people's stresses, and just wasn't really there. Came home one day from work, and my kids at the time were about 1 and 3, and you can imagine a 1 and 3-year-old kind of running around your ankles and stuff, and I just couldn't cope with it. I remember this very specific moment where I got a mug out of the cupboard and poured half of that mug full of vodka and necked it while the kids were crawling around me crying for whatever reasons they were crying. I was just unaware of that. I just literally had to just calm myself down through alcohol. And when I finished that mug, I thought, what the hell am I doing? And that was the moment where I thought, I'm running on an automatic pilot throughout my life and I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. And I just Googled how to manage stress in a mindful, spiritual way. And it came up with mindfulness and meditation. And that was the point where I started to live a more mindful life and be a bit more of a mindful parent. Then I took up some very basic mindfulness techniques, started to meditate every day. Literally started 1 minute at a time. Found it very hard to start with because your mind just wanders off constantly, left, right and centre. Your mind's wandering off to planning for the future, going back to the past, and you're never really present in the moment. Found it very hard to start with, but as I practiced it, then it starts to not get easy, because mindfulness isn't designed to be easy. Meditation is not designed to be easy, but your body gets used to you being there in the moment more, and in the present moment becomes a little bit more easy to access rather than just being on autopilot all the time. So I found this technique useful as a parent because kids are mindful anyway. They're our teachers. It's not that, I think as a parent, if you think that you're trying to teach your children lots of things, then reverse that role and look at your children as your teachers. And kids have this beautiful energy about them of dragging you back to the here and now. You see it with very young children all the way up to kind of teenagers. They're there in the moment, and they're our teachers rather than the other way around. So what I've found through mindfulness is one key thing of parenting a little bit different. As parents in Western society, we try and control our kids, but that's not the way to go. Children are free beings. In a lot of mindfulness books and a lot of in the meditation world, everyone's known as a sovereign being, and that's no different for children. And we've learned our parenting skills from our parents, and they've learned their parenting skills from their parents, and they've learned their parenting skills from their parents. So we're parenting on a 300-year-old method, which is way out of date. And I think one thing I've really valued through mindfulness and meditation is acceptance. If you accept yourself, then you're able to accept others and accept moment by moment things. So when kids are kicking off and tantruming, whatever you want to call it, then naturally sometimes our instinct is to control that situation. And and this has took me 12 years of practice, and I still get it wrong sometimes now, but when I'm more mindful and in the moment and my kids are kicking off and tantruming and all sorts of getting angry and whatever, then I find kind of just grounding myself with one breath can drag me back into that moment. I can be there for my children rather than trying to control the situation or fix the situation. When your kids are kicking off or whether they're upset or angry, sometimes we don't need to fix that. And I think the beauty of acceptance is accepting that moment for what it is. And that moment may be just being there with your child, whether it be hugging them or just listening to them, rather than trying to change the situation or trying to fix the situation. Kids act out for all different reasons, and they might have had a bad day at school, they might have had fights with friends at school, they might be struggling with certain work at school, they might have lost a life on Fortnite or wherever. Do you know what I mean? So kids are very, very chaotic beings, and as parents, sometimes we need to just be there and accept them for who they are in that moment. We see children as kicking off and they're a nightmare and all this type of stuff sometimes, and I tend to see it now as when the body gets hot, it sweats, and that's the way that's one technique of the body kind of bringing it back to its balance. Now when you see kids get upset, and this is for all of us, this is not just for children, is we act out in some way, or we get angry or we get upset and cry. It's the body's way of releasing emotional tension or emotional stress to bring it back to balance. So one thing I've learned as a parent over the last decade is being mindful in the moment for myself and being compassionate towards myself leads me to be a more mindful, accepting parent, rather than sometimes getting caught up in this hamster wheel and trying to control situations when situations actually don't need to be controlled. There's one great Buddhist saying is, how can you be compassionate to others if you can't be compassionate towards yourself? And I think being a mindful, conscious parent starts with yourself, and that oozes out, and kids pick up on that very easily. Kids are in hypnotic states, and however you're behaving, they will absorb that naturally. And if you're a very mindful being and a very accepting being of situations and moments, then children will model that behaviour, they will kind of copy that behaviour. And sometimes we don't even need to say anything in them situations. It's just about being there and being compassionate with self, but also compassionate to others. But it also has to start with kind of practicing it on yourself. So yeah, acceptance and mindfulness has been an integral part of me growing as a parent, particularly as a mindful and conscious parent, rather than being on automatic pilot and parenting from old styles of 300-400-year-old parenting skills which have never really evolved. If anyone's starting out on the path of mindfulness, particularly parents, then the first thing I really, really valued was starting off very, very small, 30-second mindfulness sitting, just being with your breath for 10 seconds, because it is absolutely rock hard to do it more than that if you've never done that before. So start small, build it up, and over time you'll start to see massive differences of how you are as a person and how that oozes out to the people around you. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and I'd love to hear some of your comments below with regards to how you started being a mindful, conscious parent, or how you started to be mindful in any way possible. We'll see you soon.